It was the kind of election that didn't end on election night. For some, it kept going, especially for Keanu Reeves and Donald Trump. It was supposed to be a professional disagreement. One conversation, two men at a charity dinner. But instead, it sparked a silent tension that grew louder with time. Donald Trump, then gearing up for another presidential campaign, approached Keanu Reeves with a request. He wanted the beloved actor to publicly support his run, to stand on his side. But Keanu didn't. And that moment planted a seed, one that grew into resentment, and eventually, retaliation. Now, years later, something has snapped. Trump's influence is stronger than ever. And Keanu? He's done staying silent. Because what just happened? Crossed the line. And this time, Keanu isn't walking away. He's heading straight to Trump, with words that will silence the noise and leave the world watching. If you're drawn to stories of truth, redemption, and the quiet courage to stand up when it matters most, join the Legends and Stories family. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and be part of something bigger than just entertainment. We tell stories that stay with you. The moment Keanu Reeves stepped out of the black SUV in front of the high-rise, he wasn't thinking about cameras or headlines. He wasn't here to win a debate. He was here for one thing: clarity. He adjusted his jacket, black, understated, like always. The street was quiet, but something in the air felt heavy, like a storm was waiting behind the next breath. Security recognized him immediately, but they didn't stop him, because Keanu didn't look like someone who could be stopped. Upstairs, Donald Trump was in a meeting, surrounded by advisors, big screens, and the soft hum of strategy. He wasn't expecting a guest, let alone this guest. When the assistant leaned in and whispered, "Keanu Reeves is here, says he wants 5 minutes," Trump didn't blink. He stood and said, "Send him in." The room quieted. Everyone knew, when these two spoke, it wasn't just conversation. It was history waiting to be made. Keanu stepped through the door and locked eyes with a man who once tried to use his silence as endorsement. But that silence had just ended. Trump's words echoed louder than they should have. "You either stand with us, or you stand in the way." Keanu stood there at the end of the long marble hallway of the gala venue, his hands in his pockets, that same calm demeanor on his face. But his eyes, they carried weight. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was disappointment. Weeks earlier, Keanu had politely declined Trump's invitation to join his re-election campaign as a high-profile public endorser. The offer was made privately during a fundraising dinner in New York. Trump had smiled wide, confident that someone like Keanu, universally beloved, respected, quietly powerful, would be an asset. But Keanu had other convictions. He didn't belong to political machines. He didn't echo the loudest voice in the room. He believed in people, not positions. And he had said no, respectfully, but firmly. And ever since that moment, things had changed. Phone calls that once came through stopped. Meetings were suddenly rescheduled. Film permits were mysteriously delayed. Business ventures tied to partners with government contracts were now under scrutiny. It didn't take long for Keanu to realize what was happening. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was personal. Trump, a master of leverage and media, was using his influence not to debate Keanu, but to box him out, to make him feel isolated. And for a while, it worked. Keanu found himself shut out of spaces he used to walk through without question. Invitations dried up, projects stalled, friends grew quiet. But Keanu wasn't the kind of man who folded. He took it all in stride, until Trump crossed a line. At a press conference just a few days ago, Trump had been asked, off the cuff, about Keanu's recent silence. And with that familiar smirk, he answered, "Keanu? Please. He's a great actor, sure. But he's soft. He hides behind words like kindness and faith. That's weakness. We're trying to build strength in this country, not poetry." That was it. That was the moment. Keanu didn't respond on social media. He didn't post a carefully crafted note or get into a back and forth with the press. He just made one phone call to the man himself. "Donald," he said, "we need to talk, in person." And now, here he was, standing face to face with a man he had once tried to respect. A man who didn't understand that true strength is silent, steady, unshakable. Trump motioned to the back of the room, a private corner booth near the giant paneled windows of the event venue. The same place captured in the cover photo. They sat, and the air tightened. For a few moments, neither man spoke. Then Trump leaned in, voice low. "You made a mistake not standing with me. You had a chance to be part of something bigger than yourself." Keanu looked him dead in the eyes. "I am part of something bigger. It's called humanity." Trump's grin faltered. "I'm not here to fight you," Keanu continued calmly. "I'm here because you crossed a line. You didn't just come after me. You disrespected something I believe in, and you did it because you thought silence meant weakness." Trump leaned back, eyebrows raised. "Well," he said, "doesn't it?" Keanu didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table. Trump stared at it. "What's this?" he asked. Keanu simply said, "It's what I was going to say tonight, before I decided to talk to you first. A speech. About what I believe. About why I said no." Trump didn't move. Keanu leaned forward. "Read it. Don't read it. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to remind you that even when you try to silence a voice like mine, you're only proving how loud it really is." The two locked eyes again, but this time, the tension wasn't from hatred. It was recognition. Trump didn't say another word. Not yet. But his expression had changed. Something was happening. And for the first time in this long public battle, Keanu had finally drawn him in. For a long moment, neither man moved. Trump glanced down at the folded paper on the table, the one Keanu had gently laid between them like a quiet challenge. He didn't touch it. Not yet. But his demeanor had shifted. The smirk was gone. His usual bluster was quieted by something he wasn't used to confronting in these kinds of conversations. Conviction without ego. Keanu didn't break eye contact. He wasn't trying to dominate the room. He was simply present, rooted. Finally, Trump leaned back in the booth, arms crossed. "You said I crossed a line. So tell me, Keanu, what line was that?" Keanu took a breath. It wasn't sharp. It was measured. The kind of breath people take before they speak from a place far deeper than memory. "You called kindness a weakness," he said. "You mocked the idea that faith and humility could be powerful. And then, you looked the world in the eye and called it leadership." Trump opened his mouth, but Keanu raised a hand slightly. Not forcefully, just intentionally. "Let me tell you a story," Keanu continued, "because I think maybe, just maybe, you've forgotten what power really looks like." The room around them felt quieter. Even though people were mingling, talking, laughing in the distance, this corner, this booth, had become something else entirely. "A few years ago," Keanu began, his voice low, "I visited a veterans hospital in Virginia. No cameras, no press, just me. I walked through the halls for hours, listening, holding hands, sitting beside men who had nothing left but memories and pain. One of them, his name was Thomas, had lost both legs in Iraq. He didn't speak much, didn't smile. His room was dark, the blinds always closed. Keanu paused. I asked if I could sit with him. He nodded once. No words, just a nod. So I sat. For nearly 2 hours, we said nothing, not a word. And just before I stood to leave, he whispered something. Trump was listening now, really listening. Keanu leaned in slightly, lowering his voice even more. He said, "You didn't try to fix me. You just didn't leave." A beat of silence. That moment taught me more about leadership than any headline, any election, any power play ever could, Keanu said. It taught me that, sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply stay. Trump's arms slowly uncrossed. His expression changed, not softened, but unsettled. "And what does that have to do with me?" he asked, trying to regain some footing. Keanu's reply came gently, but it struck like lightning. "You don't stay, Donald. You conquer. You dominate. You build walls, not just on borders, but between people. And then when someone refuses to fall in line, you try to make them disappear." His tone remained calm, steady, not attacking, revealing. "I didn't say no to you because I hate you," Keanu continued. "I said no because I've spent my whole life trying to protect what I believe in, and what you stand for, isn't it?" Trump sat quietly now. The man who usually spoke in tweets and sound bites had nothing to say. Keanu looked toward the window beside them, the one that framed the city skyline in golden hour light. The reflection of both men appeared on the glass, side by side. So different. Yet now, unmistakably connected in this moment. "You think standing up for what's right means standing alone?" Keanu asked. "Number it means standing even when the crowd tells you to sit down, even when the crowd is powerful." He finally leaned back. "I don't care about politics. I care about people. That's what scares you, isn't it? That someone who says nothing might still be louder than everything you've built." Trump didn't respond right away. He looked at the paper again. This time, he reached out, slowly, and unfolded it. As he scanned the first few lines, his lips parted slightly. The speech wasn't angry. It wasn't even political. It was human. It was about dignity, responsibility, compassion, and it was good, very good. Trump finally looked up. His voice was quieter now, almost unsure. "You really believe all this?" Keanu nodded. "With everything, I am." And in that moment, the air shifted again. Because Trump, for all his pride, all his power, all his walls, had just been seen. Not by the public, by a man who didn't need anything from him, and who still chose to sit across from him. Keanu sat on the balcony of his modest home, tucked away in the hills just outside of LA. The city lights glimmered in the distance, but his mind was elsewhere, caught in a storm that had been building quietly for years. The memory of that charity dinner with Trump played in his head like a scene on loop. That moment when Donald leaned in across the white linen table, smirked, and said, "Keanu, you're not like the rest of them. You've got something people listen to. I want you with me when we take this thing all the way." Keanu had looked him in the eye, calm and composed, and simply said, "I can't stand beside something I don't believe in." That was the beginning. Since then, things had shifted. Subtly at first. Projects delayed. Permits pulled. A major charity gala he was set to host mysteriously lost its venue overnight. Whispers began to circulate, too quiet to trace, too loud to ignore. And Keanu knew exactly where they were coming from. Trump didn't lash out with tantrums anymore. He used influence, connections, quiet pressure, and Keanu was starting to feel the weight. But it wasn't fear that filled his chest. It was frustration, not for himself, but for what it all represented. A man who called faith weakness, a man who confused power with truth, a man who once asked for support and, when denied, declared war in silence. Keanu leaned back, fingers grazing the edge of the silver crucifix around his neck. He whispered under his breath, "If this is the price of standing still in truth, so be it." The next morning, he picked up the phone. "Get me on the next available meeting," he told his manager. "I'm not waiting anymore." "Meeting with who?" she asked. Keanu paused. "Trump." Back in New York, Donald Trump stood behind his desk at Trump Tower, flipping through papers he had no intention of reading. The skyline stretched behind him like a mural of power. He was fuming. The headlines from earlier that week were still fresh. Keanu Reeves funds legal defense for environmental protesters. And worse, he had done it quietly, without a press release, without an agenda. People were calling him a silent hero. Trump hated that phrase. He believed in volume, in spectacle, in dominance. To him, Keanu's humility wasn't strength. It was threat disguised as virtue. "He thinks he's above it all," Trump muttered to himself. "Let's see how he feels when he's alone out there." But before he could dial a number, his assistant stepped in. "Mr. Trump," she said cautiously, "you have a request from Keanu Reeves. He wants to meet, in person." Trump's eyes narrowed. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Oh, does he?" He stood tall, straightened his tie, and walked to the window. "Set it up," he said. "Let's see what the humble man has to say." 2 days later, a private meeting room was arranged in an upscale Manhattan venue. Neutral ground, by design. Keanu walked in first. No entourage, no stylist. Black blazer, dark jeans, the same quiet presence that made him impossible to ignore. Trump entered minutes later, brash, confident, surrounded by 2 aides, though he waved them off as the doors closed. "Keanu," he said, extending a hand, "you finally grew tired of being noble?" Keanu didn't smile. "I came because this needs to end." Trump leaned back, intrigued. "And what? The bad press? The little social media sob stories?" Keanu's expression didn't shift. "You've made it personal," he said quietly. "You've gone after charities, projects, people who don't even know why they're suddenly getting turned down." "I don't forget insults," Trump replied. "Especially not from someone who thinks his little necklace gives him moral high ground." He nodded at the crucifix resting above Keanu's shirt. "You wear that like it's a shield." Keanu inhaled slowly. "It's not a shield. It's a reminder." "Of what?" Keanu's voice was steady now, clear. That real strength doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't destroy to prove a point. And it definitely doesn't bully behind closed doors. Trump's jaw tightened. "And yet, here you are, on my terms, in my city." Keanu stood. "I'm not here because I need anything from you," he said. "I'm here because we both have power, and the world watches what we do with it." He stepped closer, now eye to eye. "You've built your empire on noise, but I've seen how that ends. People forget headlines. They don't forget harm. One day, you'll need someone to believe in you again. And all they'll remember is what you did to people like me when they told you no." Trump opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just silence. The first time in a long time he'd been met with resistance that didn't fear him. Keanu turned to leave, but paused at the door. "And for the record," he added, without turning around, "wearing this doesn't make me holy." He tapped the crucifix. "It makes me accountable." He walked out, leaving the room colder than it had ever been. Trump stood still, alone in a room full of mirrors. And for the first time in years, he didn't like the reflection. Trump's black SUV came to a slow halt beside the tarmac, where his private jet waited with its engines humming low, the stairs already extended. The air was thick, not just with jet fumes, but with finality. Aides scrambled around him, double-checking documents, confirming security clearances, ushering photographers away. Trump was seconds away from boarding when he heard it. Donald. The voice was calm, measured, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Trump turned, his eyes narrowed. There, stepping toward him across the open tarmac, was Keanu Reeves. For a split second, the entire ground crew froze, unsure whether to intervene or simply get out of the way. Keanu's walk was slow, deliberate. He didn't run, he didn't shout, he just arrived. Trump's jaw tightened. "Keanu, this isn't the place." But Keanu didn't stop. He stepped directly into Trump's path, right between him and the jet. Trump's team stepped forward instinctively, but Trump raised a hand. "Let him speak." And Keanu did, with a voice that didn't rise, with words that didn't accuse, with a presence that didn't need permission. Just seconds before Trump was about to board his private jet, Keanu stepped in his path. Their final conversation took place in a quiet VIP lounge just a few feet from the runway. And it was there that Keanu's words changed everything. They moved to the edge of the runway, a small, secluded lounge reserved for private departures. No press, no advisors, just two men, alone in a conversation that had waited too long to happen. Trump crossed his arms. "You made your point weeks ago. Why now?" Keanu looked him dead in the eye. "Because you weren't listening." Trump scoffed, looking toward his jet. "I listened. I just didn't agree." "But you didn't hear me," Keanu said. "You heard criticism. You heard resistance. You didn't hear the warning." Trump raised a brow. "Warning?" Keanu took a breath. "Your plans? The ones you call bold and visionary? They don't build. They bulldoze. They don't inspire. They intimidate. You think that's strength? I used to think that too." Trump leaned forward. "And now? Now I know real strength," Keanu said quietly, "is being willing to be wrong. Real power is knowing when not to use it." Trump's posture shifted, just slightly. Keanu stepped closer. "You called my faith a weakness, my humility a flaw. But those things, they've kept me alive. They've pulled people back from the edge. And they've made me stronger than I ever was as a lone man in a suit, with nothing but pride to hold on to." Trump didn't speak. He just looked at him. And for once, he didn't have a comeback. Keanu continued, "This isn't about politics, or party, or even power. It's about impact. It's about what kind of world we leave behind. And if your voice is the loudest in the room, then you have a responsibility to make sure that voice is worth listening to." The silence hung like fog over the tarmac. Trump glanced down, then up at the plane. Then, back at Keanu. And for a moment, something in his expression cracked. Not defeat, but recognition. He nodded once, slow, subtle. "I didn't expect this from you," Trump said. Keanu offered a small smile. "That's the problem. No one ever does." Trump chuckled, just barely. "You know, you'd make a hell of a politician." Keanu shook his head. "I'd rather be a person who listens, who shows up, who says the hard things when no one else will." Trump sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. "I don't agree with everything you said." Keanu nodded. "I didn't ask you to." "But I heard it," Trump said. And that was enough. The two men stood there for a beat longer. No cameras, no handshake, no forced reconciliation, just an understanding. Trump turned, heading for the jet stairs. He stopped halfway up, looked back and said, "Next time you want to stop a plane, just text me." Keanu smiled. That wouldn't have worked. And with that, Trump boarded. The engines roared to life. Keanu remained standing on the edge of the tarmac, the wind whipping his hair gently, the heat of the moment finally cooling. It was over. But something had shifted. Not just in Trump, in the air, in the possibility of what comes next when two men stop talking at each other and start talking to each other. A week later, a video surfaced online. Not a recording of the confrontation. No cameras were allowed, but a single quote leaked. One line spoken by Trump to a private donor. He didn't shout. He didn't insult. He just stood there and told the truth. And for a second, I actually listened. And that, perhaps, was the real victory. Not in changing the world in one day, but in cracking open a heart-long thought sealed. One quiet conversation at a time. Did Keanu say what you've always wanted someone to say to power? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, join us here at Legends and Stories. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and never miss a tale that reminds us what courage really looks like.